Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is my new friend Amin, who joins me from Cyprus. Cyprus is one of those up-and-coming hotspots in the eyes of many nomads and expats and people who are looking to gain access to the EU from abroad. They've got some really advantageous tax laws and visa schemes for digital nomads and remote workers, and they are just, in general, very open to people coming from other countries and relocating here. It's also very affordable. It sits on this beautiful island out in the middle of the Mediterranean and has a fusion of cultures and histories and food and all sorts of things that make it extremely attractive, alongside beautiful weather, beaches, even mountains where you can go skiing, I come to learn from Amin. So plenty to enjoy about Cyprus. It's no wonder that people are falling in love with it, and Amin shares all of it with us here on this episode. He also talks a lot about his background and some of the struggles that he went through growing up in a place like Lebanon, which fell on hard times, and how he was able to recreate his life via the vehicle of remote work, which really kind of saved him in a lot of ways. So I appreciated everything that he had to share in this one, on a personal note, on a professional note, all about Cyprus. I learned a ton and just thoroughly enjoyed this one. I hope you will as well. Please help me in welcoming Amin to About Abroad. All right, we're off and running here, Amin. Let's do this.
Hi, Chase. How are you?
I'm great, man. It's good to see you, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I'm so thankful to our friend Jess that connected us. She's a previous guest here on About Abroad. We had an awesome discussion a couple years ago about Croatia and the digital nomad visa that she was on, and she's continued to be a great friend. And so I was really happy when she connected us to cover Cyprus here. I need to link to that episode in this, because for anybody listening that hasn't heard that episode, for a long time it was one of our most popular episodes ever. So all about the Croatian digital nomad visa. And anyway, here we go, man. Me and you today.
There we go. Let's go. So how's Spain so far? How's Spain treating you so far?
Oh man, I am a huge fan of Spain. I'm doing like a little escape from Spain right now. Not escape might be the wrong word, but I've been spending the last few months up more in like Central Europe. So I'm in southern Germany right now. But yeah, I mean, I think, as you know, I've been living in Spain for like almost 5 years, and I absolutely love La Vida in España. So you lived there too, or something, or did you spend some time there?
I did my master's there in Barcelona. So I stayed for up to 2 years. It was one of the enlightening experience, I might say. I had the chance to meet people from all over the world, from Argentina, Brazil, South Africa. So it was my first kind of international experience, where I met new cultures. So to me, it's a very special experience.
Man, I can only imagine. That must have been quite a change. Where were you coming from? I mean, I know you're from Lebanon, but is that where you were living at the time?
Yeah, I spent my first 24 years in Lebanon. I was in international school, so my friends were all sons of expats. So I also had the chance to meet people from, my best friends from US. Another best friend is from Brazil, since I was young. So I had the small chance to touch on different cultures when I was young. So I think that's also was very valuable to me. But yeah, I spent my first 24 years in Lebanon. Then I started jumping around. So let's see what you got. Spain, now Cyprus.
You got bit by the travel bug at 24 and didn't look back, it sounds like.
Yeah, there's a saying in Colombia, a traveler never comes back. So wherever you travel, you never come back the same. So I believe in the saying.
I think it's very true. It changes you in a pretty profound way. Different experiences offer different things. I also had that study abroad experience that just changed my perspective on a lot of things. I was a little bit younger. I was maybe 20 or something like that. But anyway, it has a big impact on your life. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine for you. So can you describe what's jumped out at you when you go from Lebanon to Barcelona? It's not that I think for some people it might be a surprise. like it's not that far geographically. I mean, you're like flying across the Mediterranean essentially, but like it's drastic. It's two different worlds, right?
It's completely two different worlds. Like it's only 3 hours and a half, 4 hours, like you said, as a direct flight. But like when I went to Barcelona, the whole metro system, I know this is like for other people, they won't think of that. But for me, like coming from Lebanon, we didn't have any infrastructure. So like your parents buy you a car at 16 because that's the only way you can go around. You know, there's no bike lanes, no metros, no bus lanes. So when I went there, I felt this, first of all, like my cousin gave me a tip, who was there in Barcelona. He was like, the first 2 months, like go around in buses so you can memorize the city, because once you're in a metro, you don't know where you're going. So I think that was one of the best tips for me to go around. I kept looking on the edge of the buildings, just reading the name of the streets, just so it stays in my head. But yeah, these small things, like this was my first free experience, you know, there was no one to lean on. There was no, because in Lebanon, like the culture is family oriented. So technically people until like 23, 24, they stay with their parents. So from that sense, it was such a freedom experience where I was walking around, nobody knows me. Yeah, it was these small things, the bus, the train, certain softwares they use it at my master's, where like in Lebanon, it was only hard copies. So these small stuff that I had to accustom to, these were the challenges. But other than that, I think Barcelona sucked me in. I found myself pretty fast. But yeah, so it was a really enlightening experience from that part. Even the freedom, how people approach each other. Let's say when you jump in a metro, I found it very difficult to sit between two people, because in Lebanon, like your house is 500 meters squared, everybody has his own space, and in Europe it's so small. So these small things that are different in culture, I felt it at first, but then you get integrated with everyone. So yeah, I think it was a very enlightening experience for me.
There's a closeness that I think kind of interesting with that. Like I also feel that a bit in Europe, that space thing. And at first it was kind of annoying to be on it. Like you'd be on the bus or on the metro and you'd have 3 seats sitting next to you wide open, and someone would sit in the one right next to you and you'd be like, man, give me my space. Or like walking on a sidewalk is a hilarious thing. My wife and I joke about it all the time. In the US, when you're walking towards someone, I actually had this experience. It cracked me up, kind of like reverse culture shock. Last time I was back in the US, there was this person walking towards me, this lady with a stroller with her kid in it. And we were like 20 feet or like, 10 meters apart, 20, 30 feet apart, something like that. And she went off the sidewalk with her stroller to like show me far in advance that she was going to like give me my space. It wasn't even necessary. Like we both could have passed, but it caught me off guard, because in Spain, for example, it's the total opposite. People will bump right into you, like brush shoulders, and there's no second thought given to it. And I think it has to do with this mentality around space. Like for you in Lebanon, for me in the US, it's like you just have more space. Whereas in Europe, people are kind of living in these older cities that have been built a long time ago, and you're on top of each other a little bit more. And I've come to love that closeness. It's like, I don't need my space. We're all humans. We're all connected here. I don't know. I've come to love it, but it was a funny thing at first, and it sounds like a little bit of culture shock for you as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like in Lebanon, it's kind of disrespectful if you don't move. It's not said out loud, but it's like a cultural thing. Like if you saw someone on the sidewalk, especially an older person or anyone actually, you need to move 10 meters before. It's like kind of an etiquette to how to get your things going. But yeah, it's really cool to see different cultures. I think it's to me, traveling really like expands your mind into things that you like. Sometimes you read a book and you expect what you're gonna get out of it, but like when you travel, you don't know what you expect. So you're going there, like you don't know what you learned from this culture, the small things. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it makes the day-to-day just a little bit more exciting, I think, just not knowing exactly what you're going to get every single day, facing some of the little challenges and overcoming those challenges along the way. I have mentioned it before on the show, and it's like it makes the mundane exciting, and that's what it's all about for me.
Yeah. Spanish people smile as well, but also like in Barcelona, like there's a closeness and how they approach. Even if you bump your eye into them, they give you a smile. Also in Barcelona, like this internet, like my class had probably 25 nationalities, and it was so nice to see. Like even though maybe at some point some of these things bothered me when I was on the spot, like certain cues from different cultures. But then you learn how to like appreciate, like I have the chance to meet someone from Korea. I have the chance to meet someone from Japan, and just creates this way to try to understand this emotional intelligence in a way, like grows your emotional intelligence into that. Like, no, I need to understand this, where this person came from first before I answer or before I judge. So to me, that was also like a huge cue that helped me a lot.
Yeah, and we all interact in different ways, right? Like the facial expressions that we make, the hand gestures, the way that we respond to positive feedback, negative feedback, all these things are very different. Like what's rude in your country might be totally acceptable in another country. It shows itself in the little interactions, just like the conversations and and then certainly like you and I are both working on global teams. I mean, in the workplace, you see it all the time. I actually just saw, I mean, kind of connected to this, it's a little bit different, but I just went to the Employer of the Future event, which was up in Berlin a couple weeks ago. And there was a presentation on the use of emojis in the workplace. And part of the presentation by Nadia Harris, she did a fantastic job. She's talking about how people in different cultures interpret emojis in different ways. Like certain things mean like really crazily different stuff. Like one of the most extreme ones was like the clapping emoji was like, for many of us is like celebrating, but in some cultures they see that as like a symbol of like sex, like your hands like rubbing together to simulate like sex. And so it's just like you have to be very aware of who you're interacting with. And so we're talking about emojis there, but like in real life, like real facial expressions and real gestures and things like that, the way we react is mind blowing. And I think that's what makes it makes work fun. And I don't know if that's part of what attracted you to Oyster, but like for me, it was a big attraction to do us getting to interact with that every single day was really important to me.
Like when I came back from, like, I totally relate with that. Like to me, like the first 3 months at Oyster, I had this imposter syndrome in a way. Like, what is this Lebanese guy doing with so much talented people who have their own ways of communicating? And it was all new to me, the whole remote work. So I think like I can relate to that and how I used to answer. Like I was going back into Slack, seeing like certain threads, and the way I used to answer on a thread is just I evolved in this year and a half in just a tremendous way where I learned from others how to communicate. So yeah, like to me, Oyster was, how do I say it? So I'm going to just go back to Lebanon, just give you a small glimpse of why I chose Oyster, if that's okay from your side.
Yeah. I'm genuinely curious, so I would have asked you anyway.
So Lebanon, I just I had a couple of jobs in Beirut. My last job was in OLX. OLX is like an C2C platform. It's pretty big. The job was going great, but then the crisis of gas happened and hyperinflation happened. So salaries dropped to $50 and $60 a month because like the currency of Lebanon dropped, and we had to wait in line to fill our cars and gas. So my commuting increased from 4 hours to around 7 hours a day. So I had to wait for like an hour and a half in a gas station, wait for my car, and I could only get 20 liters, but I had a Toyota Yaris, so it worked well. So I would go down to Beirut from the north because I come from a really small village in the north, just go back and the same day every day. And suddenly I find Tony on LinkedIn. So kept reading this post, and at first like I didn't know what Oyster is. Like it was compliance and payroll, and like to me this was like magic. So I had the chance to follow Tony for like 2 months, and then I was like, this is it. I need to apply to Oyster. I did my research and found that the guy called Muhammad Chamas, who also works at Oyster, is Lebanese, and he's a common friend with my partner. So this is where I reached out. I got referred, and the process was amazing. Like to me, I was wearing, like, just to tell you what I expect, like I was wearing almost a suit to my online interview, and my manager was wearing a t-shirt. So the first interview, I felt so awkward. I was like, hey man, like I'm wearing a blazer and a shirt because that's what I'm supposed to wear in Lebanon. This is the old norm that we have here. Like you need to dress up perfectly to go out there and like give a first impression. And then my next interview was with Chris Martin, the head of sales. We only talked about farming. So I came out of the interview and like I told Mira, my wife, I'm like, hey, like we just talked about farming. This guy didn't ask me anything about sales in my career. So just the whole experience from the interview until now, I just find it, first of all, I'm very grateful for it. I got the chance to take care of my parents, get a decent salary, work remotely from Lebanon to Cyprus. But then when I got this remote job at Oyster, with the gas crisis that's happening, internet companies couldn't find gas to turn on their generators. So we had a problem, just connecting to internet. So I had to subscribe to 3 different internet companies and juggle between the 3. And then electricity shut out. So I had to bring batteries for the routers. So with that, all of that happening, like I met Tony face to face and we chatted with him. So he's the one who encouraged me to go to Cyprus because he also moved from the UK to Cyprus. And the Cyprus journey started from there. My wife also works at Oyster. She started 2 months after me. She's a learning designer. So kind of worked out perfectly for us. And
it's so cool that this is one of the things I have to say, like, that I think goes a little bit, it flies a little under the radar in the whole like remote work, future of work discussion. This phrase democratization of opportunity is thrown around a lot, and I think it sounds awesome. I think it actually like encapsulates the idea a lot, and it's not to take anything away from that, but it can also be like very vague. Like, what exactly does that mean? And I think people think about like people in third world countries just getting access to Fiverr or something. And there's some amazing stories out there about that and, them changing their life through that. So that is one aspect of it, but it's not the only aspect. There are like hardworking people who had really great professions and or lots of skills, people like yourself who, have gone to Europe and gotten a master's degree and presumably had, a career that you were working hard for before, but like your country fell on hard times, like Lebanon was hit by a series of events that changed everybody's life there, and through no fault of your own, you're kind of thrust into this really tough situation. And that is something that also this whole democratization of opportunity can change. It gives people like yourself the opportunity to say, not only I have a job and I can progress my career and have fulfillment and a salary and all those things, but also to be able to relocate to a place where you can live a little bit better life right now. And I think I hope we hear more of those stories as part of this greater discussion, because I think it's what really epitomizes the opportunity here.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Okay, remote work is awesome for people who want to stay in their countries, but there's some people who don't want to stay in their countries. Like in my country, I didn't want to stay back then. Like all I wanted was to surf, do some stand-up paddling, live a simple life on an island, which was the case. My village in Lebanon is beautiful. It's called Amphi. If you ever visited, it's like a mini Greece. It's up in the north. But I think there's people from Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, where there's a lot of things that we can't control, even with elections, even with everything going on, the political parties that have been here for 400 or 500 years. There's something with liberal thinkers that can't change, even though we tried. I went on the streets in Beirut when there was a revolution. People shot at us. The government shot at us. So, it's not me. To me, I'm a master graduate. I came down to try to change the system. I know a friend who lost an eye, who's an electric engineer with 2 masters. So I felt like there was no change and I needed to get out. So like you said, sometimes distribution of wealth, in other words, is awesome. But sometimes people want the opportunity to work remotely, but also to change where they live. That was the case for me and my wife as well. And I know a lot of other Lebanese people like me and my age are doing the same.
Yeah, you bring up a interesting point, and if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you about this. Let me draw a parallel beforehand. So, I have a friend that actually came on About Abroad in season 1, named Rafa from Venezuela. Venezuela's got one of the, I think it sort of flies under the radar. It's one of the largest mass migrations of in human history is from Venezuela, currently happening right now. And he was, in some ways, similar, and country fell on tough times, some challenging things politically, economically, all these things. And, remote work kind of saved him in a lot of ways because he was able to move to Spain, bring his family there. Long story short, what I thought was really interesting was this dynamic that happened there where I asked him, essentially everybody was leaving, all the young people were leaving, and they were actually having going away parties, celebrations for people when they would get placed in other countries. So your family was celebrating the fact that you were leaving them, and you were spread. So he's living in Barcelona or he's living in Valencia, but none of his family, friends, some are still in Venezuela, others are spread all over the world. But it was still a celebration, a recognition from an early age that you're going to leave here, when you're 14 years old or whatever, when you're talking about the future, the idea is you're going, you have to go somewhere else because here is not your opportunity. And so I have no idea, what was that your reality growing up?
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
exactly
So
the same.
that
So like
resonates.
when you finish universities, the first wish someone like wishes upon you is like, I hope you find a job abroad, because Lebanese, like all my friends are in Qatar or Saudi Arabia, my sister and husband, my dad is in Qatar. So usually Lebanese are expats by nature. I think it's because it's been on a roller coaster since like 1965. My dad is an expat. He spent all his life in the Middle East. That's the only, in other words, Chase, that's the only situation you can give a decent life to your family. So like my dad's a mechanic and he was doing his first year as a mechanical engineer. Then the war happened in Beirut, the civil war, and his dad died. So he had to leave. So if he stayed in Lebanon as a mechanic without a degree, like I wouldn't be able to go to like a private school, learn English well, study with people from all over. I wouldn't be able to go to a good university because the government doesn't, if you want to go to a government-based school, like it end up like teachers still beat their kids around here. So there's certain things that you can't do if you're still working in Lebanon. It's impossible for my dad to give us this life for me and my sisters, except if he's going away. So in another word, like I'm my dad's biggest investment, his kids, not only me. So because there's no social security for my dad, who's been working for 45 years, they pay a lot and they invest in your education. So later on in life, you're their social security. Like, I have to send money to my parents. It's not something I do it out of, I have to do it. No, it's like we know it. Like this is the way it goes in Lebanon. My friends send money to their parents because their parents invested in us for us to travel and go. So there's a lot of cues and now I know in distributed companies that people don't know about. And I'm glad that in Oyster, we can share this stuff. Like I can tell my friends about it when we're discussing salary bands and transparency. Some people tell you like Lebanon may be cheaper than Germany, but at the same time, like, you don't have to worry about insurance and stuff like that. In Lebanon, if you don't have private insurance, which costs millions, like you would die. You would die on in the hospital outside. So I think there's a lot of things that I think this remote work is also getting people closer together. I know now my friends from Ireland, from the UK, from Germany, they understand the Lebanese situation. So I think it's not only beneficial for people coming from third world country, but I think people coming from the US and Germany, they're learning something about other cultures that they didn't know about. So I think that's awesome as well.
Oh yeah, it humanizes all of us in such a deep way, right? Like you see the rest of the world through a totally different lens. It's not just those people that you see on the news, living this where you watch 30 seconds of some clip on the news that talks about what's happening in XYZ country. But you meet and interact with those people. You're working through challenges with them day to day, and you get to have those like actual deep conversations and peer into what their life is like. And I think it changes your perspective on everything. You can't go back once you've had that perspective.
Yeah, I agree. And I also learn a lot, like taxes, for example. I'm learning a lot now in Cyprus.
What are you learning? Because like I've actually we're gonna spend a good bit of time on Cyprus here because I'm fascinated by this country. Like first of all, I think I'll bet a lot of people listening know very little about Cyprus. Some people listening are gonna know plenty, but I mean it's a country that flies a little bit under the radar. It's geographically it's your neighbor there in Lebanon. You couldn't have moved much closer if you were going to another country, and yet it's a part of but it's part of Europe. They're considered, politically and geographically part of Europe in a lot of ways, and so and then it's like now becoming like this nomad hotspot. It's a place where people are going to set up their tax residency, and on top of all that, it's like beautiful, like sitting out there in the Mediterranean, this gorgeous island. And so somehow or another, it's sort of flown under the radar, but I feel like it's emerging from the shadows.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I think Cyprus is beautiful. Like geographically, the island is full. It has awesome mountains. I played ski last year. Best beaches out there. So from geographical point of view, I think like if someone, I know you like nature, but for people who like nature, there's where I live, it's a place called Paphos. Like there's like one of the biggest natural reserves there in Cyprus, where like the end of the island is like filled with sea lions, sea turtles, beautiful beaches, blue turquoise beaches. So it's really beautiful for nature lovers. And what I like about it, which we don't have in Lebanon, is like everything beautiful, like the beaches and the mountains are free. Like it's not like there's no like big business owners who took over it and made it private. I think that's pretty awesome that they still live this this simple island life, but at the same time, there's bike lanes, the roads are awesome. We can go from this end to this end from the island in 1 hour. So geographically, I think it's one of the best decisions for me and my wife compared to what we do in life. Like if we want to do surfing or skiing or hiking, I think it's beautiful from that point of view.
Can I ask you, Amin, did I hear you correctly? You went skiing? Like there's like snow skiing?
Yeah. I'm waiting for this season as well. I think it started snowing there.
What?
There's cool. Yeah, man. There's like the Cedars Forest where like it's all snow and people play ski. It's not huge, but like, it's 30, everything is 30, 35 minutes away in Cyprus. So, so just you hop in the car, you go and you play some ski. After you finish, you can go down the beach, have a beer. It's just like, it's beautiful from that point of view. The sun is like 310 days, I think 315. So it's just beautiful and it's very convenient.
I had no idea. I'm Googling this. I'm looking at pictures while we're talking here. There is, as legit as you just said, there are like snowy ski mountains, and then you can just drive right down the road to the beach, and it looks like you're in like the Greek Isles again. This is insane. I had no idea.
It's beautiful, man.
We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by my good friends over at Greenback Tax. As an American citizen, I'm from one of only 2 countries in the entire world that requires I pay taxes on my global income, regardless of which country I'm actually living in. So when I started my expat journey back in 2015, I knew my tax situation was about to get complicated. Fortunately, I discovered Greenback, and I've never looked back. Greenback is 100% focused on helping U.S. expats with their tax situation, and to date, they've filed almost 50,000 returns for nearly 15,000 happy customers from more than 200 different countries. After 7 years working together, I can say with confidence that they make one of the most painful parts of life abroad an absolute breeze with their automated systems, friendly advisors, and expertise in the very specific niche of U.S. expat taxes. Also, for those of you who may have fallen behind on your taxes and or you're trying to get ahead of tax season in 2023, Greenback has your back here as well. They can assist with late filings to ensure you don't encounter any problems with the IRS and to make sure you start 2023 off right. Tax season is on the horizon. Learn more about Greenback today by going to greenbacktaxservices.com via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, so many of you write in asking how to support the show best, and if you are listening and made it this far into the episode, then I'm going to presume that perhaps you're one of those people that wants to help. So if that's the case, the best thing you could do right now would be to open up the app that you're currently using to listen to this episode. Go to the little arrow thing that allows you to share, select it, and share it to one of your social media networks. That would be a huge, huge help. You can feel free to tag me at DC Warrington, and I'll slap you a virtual high five from wherever I am in the world. Thank you so much for the support. We really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy listening to the rest of this episode.
From that point, like someone who likes nature, I think it's awesome. And for also people who like the old cities, I think Nicosia, the capital, which is now split between Turkish Cyprus and Greek Cyprus, I think it has a lot of history. It has like a wall. It's still divided. Well, it's the only city in the world, by the way, that's still divided.
Oh, really? Okay, so hold on. Let's clarify something real quick. The physical geographical island of Cyprus it has Turkish area and Cypriot area. I don't know what the right way to phrase that is.
The Greek Cypriots, yes. So after the civil war happened, it was based on religion, unfortunately, but yeah, they separated the island. So the Muslims, Greeks are called now Turkish Cypriots, where they live in the Turkish side, and the Christian Greeks live on the other side. But it's not like heavily armed between Turkish Cyprus and Greek Cyprus. So it's like now it's like a tourist destination. So you just walk in the city, you cross the borders and you get to eat some Turkish food and go back to the city. So there's a lot of experiences out there, whether it's historical or, if you want to live in a busy city, you can live in Nicosia or Limassol where like there's beautiful buildings. And you can live in Paphos where I live, where the highest building is 2 floors, live an island life. So I think that's beautiful. That's what really attracted me to Cyprus.
This is crazy, man. Okay, so I didn't know about the ability to cross between the two. I thought it was like pretty distinctly drawn, Turkish side and Cyprus side. Why do you say Greek? It was formerly a Greek island? Is the Greek part, like, does it still feel Greek in a lot of ways?
They speak Greek.
Okay.
They're full on Greek. They speak English as well because it was a UK colony back in the days. So that's what also I think is attracting digital nomads, that almost anyone speaks English.
Ah,
That's a very
gotcha.
good thing. It's very
Yeah.
like wherever you go, if you don't speak Greek, they all are fluent or semi-fluent in English, so you can get by anytime. But yeah, like I think they call it Greek Cypriots. I think because when the war happened, the Greeks had this side and the Turks had the other side. That's why
How
I think the name.
I'm
Yeah,
fascinated by this thing that you can just like walk back and forth between like a European Greek island and Turkey. Like you can be on the same island and technically be in both. I mean, it just feels like two different worlds colliding on this like little tiny island.
yeah, man, it's amazing. And the Turkish side is pretty awesome as well. Like I got the chance to live on the Greek side, but the Turkish side, I think a lot of people are going there because it's cheap. I know a lot of people who live in Nicosia, the Greek side, but they go and have regular lunch in the Turkish side because it's like maybe 200% less cheaper. So there's a lot of things that just like you go around and like, oh, this is an awesome culture here. You cross the border, still an awesome culture. And, it's like very enriching for me.
Yeah.
Like just to,
Yeah. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything when you talk about like that fusion of two different cultures. And by the way, I'm a total nerd for this kind of thing in general. Like so I don't know about you, like coming from Lebanon, but coming from the US, like we have this giant, massive piece of land where like you barely hear, like there's like slight differences between the accents, but like you have 330 million people all speaking the same language and you can drive like, 40 hours in one direction and it doesn't change that much. So to be in these areas throughout Europe and other parts of the world where you have these like ancient fusions of cultures happening in a relatively small place, just totally, I go total nerd on all this because I just think it's so cool. And this is like the epitome of that in a lot of ways. And then throw in like ski mountains and incredible
beaches.
Mediterranean beaches and
Yeah.
the history. I mean, this is sweet.
Yeah, I think like me and Mira, my wife, was like, we bought our SUP. We got an old Toyota RAV4, a 1995 for 2,000 euros, just working like a charm, just living the island life. And we go to Nicosia every weekend, just like, to immerse in the culture. My wife, her grandmother is half Greek. Her grandmother is Greek, so she speaks Greek really well. That also like gave us a plus when we went there. Like, she speaks the language, she knows the culture. And the Mediterranean culture is very similar. So you would see similarities in Spain, Greece, Cyprus, and Lebanon. There's certain similarities in the food and the body language and the looks. I think that's also some of the attraction where like, okay, I'm not that far from Lebanon. It's only 16-minute flight. So
I was just about to ask you that exact question. So it's legitimately like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, but they put 30 minutes on the ticket because I think they can't, make a flight that's less than 30 minutes. I think it's like a worldwide rule. I'm not sure about that, but I think I heard it somewhere. But it's actually a 16-minute flight or 15-minute flight. It's like, it's nothing. Like you don't go like up the 30,000 feet. Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. That's why like now you have a lot, like 50,000 or 60,000 Lebanese who just moved to Cyprus after what happened in Lebanon. Because, they have people who just went there, opened their businesses and kept their family here, or other way around. Some people just moved their family here to Cyprus and they stayed in Lebanon because, he has a business, but wasn't safe for his kids or her kids. So I think Cyprus was a refuge for the Lebanese people to go, and they were very welcoming. The people are so nice. The food is similar, and the Cypriot government, they really helped the Lebanese out. I know a lot of Lebanese who just changed their lives just by going there, working as waiters, just as I know a lot of bartenders here who just went to Cyprus and are making a lot of money there. So small things, hospitality and this kind of stuff, I think Cyprus was a great refuge for the Lebanese in this crisis. So I'm grateful for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a map, you see like Lebanon sandwiched in between Syria and Israel, and you've got what is it, Turkey to the north, and then like so 15 minutes flight away, you're technically on a European island. What is the difference? Like, what are the drastic differences for you? Considering that, I mean, it's such a short trip, and what you envision life being like, what you lived, in Lebanon, what someone might envision life is like in like in Israel, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey. I think the imagination takes you to like Middle East versus Europe in a lot of ways. Does that click for you? And if so, or if not, like how do you compare contrast? Like what jumps out at you?
Yeah, it does in certain ways, but I'm a bit cautious about it because like I had the chance to, travel before, but I agree 100% on that. Like I said, from the food perspective, I think Lebanese cuisine is influenced by the Turks and the Greeks a lot. But from a culture perspective, I think Europeans are much more freer than Lebanese. We have a lot of taboos that I think is the same in Turkey and Syria and Israel and Palestine. So I think that's the most different thing I see. I see people very liberal about who they are and like their culture, and sometimes they might come across as rude, but if you just take a second to look at it, it's just who they are. Just there's no taboo, there's no like, it's not that they don't think about anyone else, it's just like they're so comfortable with themselves, which sometimes make it intimidating for people coming from a culture like mine, where like you have to, watch what you say or just watch what you do because, you're representing a whole family in certain words. So I think this will be always something that I have to, juggle between. I don't know if I made sense. Just like,
no, it totally makes sense. And it actually like connects back. You said something earlier that I was hoping to come back to because I found it kind of interesting and probably like definitely appreciated you being a little bit like vulnerable and sharing, your mindset at a specific time in your life. Like you mentioned when you first started at Oyster, how you had this imposter syndrome where you were a little bit worried about people saying like, who is this Lebanese guy? Like what does he know or something like that? And like, I wonder if you can elaborate on that a little bit, because there are two things here. One, I think the remote world lends itself too much to imposter syndrome. Like I think even the most successful people that I know working in this environment still suffer from the imposter syndrome thing in a lot of different ways. And then it sounds like what you were carrying into it was some like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like this sense of like, I need to prove myself, or like perhaps I'm perceived as like inferior to you or whatever it might have been. So can you elaborate on that? Like what your experience was and maybe where that was rooted in?
Yeah, I agree. Like how you said it's perfect. So from my side, it's like there's two aspects to it. I never worked remotely. That was first thing. So the tools were new. Everything was new. My English wasn't that like, it was good, but at the same time, I didn't practice it that much. So I would stutter. My internet wasn't doing well. Every time I'm in a meeting with my manager or with my team, it would cut out. So these small things, it made me think like, hey man, like, am I in the right position? Will they fire me in 2 weeks? Like the only thing they required at Oyster is for you to have a good internet. And I wasn't able to provide that. So, and there was nothing I can do about it. Like it was such a hassle. It's like I was carrying a 600 kilo on my back just to find good internet. So I paid money to someone who gives internet to a bank. Like I tried so many solutions, and I think this negative small things that happened every day in my first 3 weeks and 1 month, just, they pulled me down and just giving me like, I'm not worth this to work with these people. Like, it's like I'm an Uber driver without a car, like a remote worker without Wi-Fi. It's like, drove me insane. Like I couldn't do anything about it. It's not like some skill that I can improve. I think that was the main thing. I knew like with time and with the training that Oyster provides and the onboarding and like the culture was always reassuring, that my manager was always, hey man, don't worry, we got you, like we understand. I was lucky that Oyster was my first remote experience, but at the same time, deep inside, like I felt like I had a lot to prove just because I'm coming from a country that doesn't have Wi-Fi, doesn't have internet. I've had people like translate a joke for me because they thought like I don't know, the meaning. So I like that people are considering my culture, but at the same time, I would feel, do you think that's because, they know I don't have electricity, or they know that I don't have Wi-Fi? So I think that was big part of my imposter syndrome. It's like where I'm coming from and the accessibility that I have to internet and electricity, and the crisis just made things worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, like nothing to do with your skills, nothing to do with your experience. Like it's totally out of your hands, and you're therefore robbed of opportunity in a lot of places that aren't as great as Oyster is. That you're right, like that could have robbed you of your opportunity. It's awesome that your leadership from the top down there is just has done such a fantastic job creating this culture that it wouldn't warrant that, but but I can imagine the fear there early on, before you really understand that. And I think it reminds me of something. I saw this conversation happening on Twitter or somewhere where it was like, what are some skills that you need to have in this whole remote work world? And one of them that somebody brought up was like, how about empathy? And that really resonated with me, because it's like, you have to have empathy for what people are like. You don't see them. First of all, you don't always see people's faces or know what they're going through. If you're distributed around the world, you're having very different experiences every single day. That could be weather. It could be, catastrophe, economically, politically. It could be a really great day. Like everybody's getting a different experience. So you have to have this extra level of empathy for what people are going through. And I think that's going to be I think it's a really strong skill in this new world of work.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad that like the CEO is Lebanese. I know that Reese is very cultured. Like the people who created the culture at Oyster were empathetic. So I think I was super lucky that I had the chance, to work with like these people who created this. But yeah, like from my side, like what also gave me positive affirmations is that like Oyster invested in me going to Cyprus, even though I didn't show them anything yet, because, I wasn't being able to perform my real job. Like, I don't know if you know Salesforce, but like Salesforce is the Bible for sales. And my internet couldn't open Salesforce because it has a lot of data. And like every time I would open it, and it wouldn't open, just the web wouldn't open. It's like simple things like that. Like I couldn't do my basic job. So yeah, I think I'm always very grateful to that. Like I had the chance to go back. I sent money to my parents. I live a decent life. Just the time frame that remote work has changed my life in like 1 year and 3 months, 1 year and 4 months. Just, I don't think anything can change someone's life and the people around him this fast. Like I don't know if you experienced it, but like to me, this 1 year and 4 months, like man, like my life has just like, completely changed. I'm more responsible. I have more money to give my parents. I feel more secure. My parents feel more secure. I help my friends out now in this tough times. Like I do my best to share, and I still feel like I'm on top of my things. And I just think that's all because of remote work.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? I mean,
it's the best workplace innovation ever.
Yeah. I mean, it just totally summarizes what we talk about when we say the democratization of opportunity and providing people just a real chance, like that wouldn't have existed maybe 5, 10, I mean, really didn't exist like 15 years ago, and to the masses did not exist 3 or 4 years ago. It's just, and as quickly as all that's happened for you, I think the whole movement, as a whole has kind of had a similar trajectory, like just this hockey stick moment where it's just skyrocketed out of nowhere. And so this is the stuff I hope we talk about more, because, you said like, I don't know if you had that experience. Like, no, the truth is the honest truth is I'm a guy, got lucky and haven't had to escape a bad situation. I'm one of the privileged people that is choosing to leverage remote work to explore and travel. And unfortunately, I think that story is told a lot more, where you see, camper vanning across Europe or going and spending a month in Bali or whatever it might be. These make awesome Instagram pictures and people love those stories for those reasons. But I really love this movement for your reason. Like that's obviously what it's really about. And it's really easy to just say that. I get that. But, and I'm meanwhile living the living epitome of what I'm kind of hating on here in another way. But I mean, it really, really lights me up to like hear your story, the positive impact that this has had on you. So it's really cool. And I love that you're sharing about it and not like shying away from it, because I think that's probably more inspirational for people than you probably even know. So kudos to you for opening up and, talking about all aspects of it, not just the greatness that has come from it, but also the imposter syndrome and the challenges and, where you came from. These are all, this is the whole story.
Yeah, I think part of the life that you're living, I know my friend from Ireland, Jack, who's my teammate, always tell me like, man, I can't relate, I don't have the same. You guys had your own problems, at the same time. So I think for you to give someone like me a voice to talk, a platform to talk, I think this is like one of the biggest contributions someone can give for people coming from this world, like to share the story, how it is, and just like without any judgment or comparing this life to this life. Like now, like once I went to Cyprus, I got a drone and I have an Instagram page called Rolling Remotely, me and my wife, and I just try our best to take awesome videos and just share everything. I help people from Lebanon to get tech jobs as well. So I'm giving back. So this is my way to, give back. I remember I had a conversation with Jack Murdoch, I think my first month, and I was telling him about this imposter syndrome because he posted about it on LinkedIn. And he was also an immigrant, went to the States and had a problem talking about it. So I talked to him and he was like, you will find your voice. Like you will find your silver lining someday. And it took me like 7 months or 8 months for me to start posting on LinkedIn, creating a social selling, trying to share my story with people coming from my background and how I can help. But I just think with time, like once people get to know more what's going on in the world, and I just think this will create more opportunities for people coming from Lebanon, Egypt, India, all these countries that face small, like certain things, and like Ukraine. Like I know my best colleague is from Ukraine, Irina, who also moved to Slovakia, and just remote life made it much easier for her to escape a war zone than any other thing. So just like, as I said, it's the best workplace innovation ever.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, that imposter syndrome is not, we mentioned this earlier, but it runs rampant through Jack, for instance. I mean, he's co-founder there, in a lot of ways you would say like has no reason to feel impostery, and yet it even touches him. I've suffered from it as well. I'm kind of afraid to use my voice and not sure if, anybody cares or is it useful or whatever. So, I mean, there's I know some very successful people that are touched by that. I know we don't have a ton of time left. I was hoping we could return to Cyprus really quick with maybe some kind of just like quick tips, practical information, because I think we'll probably pique some people's interest. I know my interest is piqued. Like I want to come visit. So maybe we can just touch on a few things to the degree that you feel comfortable and you're no expectations that you're a pro here on any of these things, but anything you can share because you probably know more than the average person. I've heard a little bit about this like Cyprus digital nomad scheme, which is designed to entice digital nomads, remote workers to come set up in Cyprus. Do you know anything about that program? Any quick bullet points or any resources people should look for?
So from that, like I think Cyprus is investing a lot in digital nomading. So I know it because I spent some time with Tony, and I know Tony is also helping them with that, our CEO at Oyster. I think he also came to Cyprus because of that. So I think there's this tech scheme, like which is like they call it the specialist scheme or the specialist visa, which me and my wife are on. They still take taxes from you, but not at the same level as a regular, citizen. I think this can be applied through. Like the only issue, like there's not a lot of information about it, but like if you ask companies like Oyster, like Deal, like Remote or other companies, they can help you with that. But there's also the pink slip, which I think is great for everyone. It's just like you have to prove that you have 15K or bring 15K in your 1 year stay in Cyprus, which is tax free. So let's say you want to stay in Cyprus for a year, you can bring each month around 1,200, 1,400 euros. That's tax free, and you can still get a residency. That's for non-EU residents. But for EU residents, I think it's pretty easy to come by and, find your digital nomad visa. But like I know more about people non-EU procedures than EU procedures, if you know what I mean, because it's completely different. Like coming from a non-EU zone, it's different than being EU. But I can definitely get you more information about it, give you the names, and maybe you can tag them in the comments for the podcast. And, I can ask Tony if he knows more about it. But yeah, from what I know, a lot of people are doing is called the pink slip. So it's actually, so people are just going there. Either they have 15K on the spot, or they say they bring it on throughout. So let's say you have a job in Spain and you're getting paid in Spain, but you're still getting taxed in Spain. You don't want to be taxed in Cyprus as well. So you come with this pink slip and just transfer money each month, and then automatically you can stay there as a resident tax-free. So I think this is the best, especially if you're paying tax in a different country. I know it's hard to pay taxes to places. So
yeah,
I think the pink slip is awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I mean, that's a big problem for us Americans. Is like we're always, the U.S. is one of only 2 countries in the world that's actually going to continue taxing us regardless of where we are. So that's I think that's one reason why I know within American circles, it's a big. It's not. I don't think it would be correct to call it a tax haven, but Cyprus is an attractive place to go because you can establish your tax residency in, I believe it's 60 days. I could be wrong, but basically, I mean,
it's pretty fast.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
pretty
it's
fast.
super fast. Like in a lot of countries, that's 6 months. So that means in theory, as far as I know, nobody quote me on this and do your own research, but I believe, and also you, I mean, tell me, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I believe that means you could come to Cyprus, set up your, be there for 60 days, and that becomes your tax residency. And then you're paying like low Cyprus taxes to Cyprus. And a lot of that, it sounds like, can be forgiven before you even, like, you have to reach a certain level before you even get to taxable income. So, I mean, I think for those reasons, it becomes very attractive, especially for people who are like nomading, traveling around a lot. Like, yeah, come spend your winters in this tropical paradise and then, travel around the rest of the world and lower your tax bill by 40%.
I think Tony did it as well. Like Tony is there for many reasons. First, to stay close to Lebanon, but I think also because like it's a tax haven for people. And I know I met a lot of people there who came like just they created Cyprus as their tax resident, as you said, and just they travel around. Just an awesome place, like especially for people who want to invest. You can buy a small apartment for 50K, 400 meters, away from the beach, and once you're not there, you can rent it, and it's just a beautiful place to be. Like from all perspectives.
I mean, I don't even like to spend a lot of time on like cost of living because, I think it depends on where you're coming from. Even if you're coming from, somebody coming from Barcelona versus somebody coming from rural Spain, their viewpoint on what affordable is just totally different. But generally speaking, I mean, it sounds like it's not a place where you expect, okay, you're paying like a high premium to be in this place. You feel like it's, by European standards, it's a affordable place.
Yeah, 100. Like me and my wife have an apartment. It's 2 floors, 2 balconies, 2 bedrooms. It's pretty wide for €400 a month.
Wow.
I think it's awesome.
That's awesome. 30 minutes from the ski slopes, like right by the beach. Yeah. I mean, 15 minutes commute back home. Yeah. I know people that, like, for instance, I grew up in the Southeast US, and I know people that live in, like, for example, like Atlanta, Georgia, is a place where people expect to commute like 45 minutes to an hour. Like it's nothing to be like, yeah, I'm going to drive over to your house and just expect that it's going to take an hour. And so it's just mind blowing to me to think about like, yeah, in just 15 minutes, you fly, back to Lebanon. 30 minutes you drive from the beach to the mountains and go skiing. I mean, that's nuts.
My best friend works in New York and he works in retail. So like he has to go to like different states, and he's telling me, yeah, man, he calls me when he has a drive, and I'm like, hey bro, how long is your drive? And he's like 7 to 8 hours. I'm like, bro, this is the whole day. Like I can't get my mind around it. Like the States is so big, in Cyprus, you need like an hour, 10 minutes to go from the end of the shore to this shore, like maximum 1 hour, just if you're cruising without speeding, just cruise around, So just the matter of space and convenience you have in these small islands is awesome. And the beautiful thing about Cyprus is like it's very similar to the Greek islands, but at the same time it has everything. Like it has big malls, cities. Just in case someone like who wants to change scenery, like you can go to Limassol, where it's called like the big downtowns. Beautiful stuff, yacht clubs. If you're financially well, there's things that suit you, and if you're getting paid like even 25K a year, the first 19K is tax free. So for people who are just starting their career, like you can start your career getting taxed only on like, let's say 10K of your yearly income. So that's a big boost for me and my wife as well. Like, like I have a good salary, but like I'm saving like around 70% probably from my salary, which is tax free, and just, it's awesome.
It's nuts, man. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes, and it also sounds like it's an open place. Like you mentioned being welcomed, and I've heard stories of like, Syrian refugees, for example, being welcomed there. And do you get the impression like it's a place that's open to foreigners? Because that's not, I don't think that's something that, we should always just assume is the case, even with hotspots that are becoming more frequented by foreigners. It's not always the case that they're super welcomed, but it does sound like Cyprus is one of those places.
Yeah, it surely is. Like if you read about it, like go before the Civil War, Famagusta, like the Beatles used to come to the Famagusta beaches, and like it was very famous in its hospitality. And if you like, when I was looking for masters, I remember like everything's about hospitality and restaurant management and Cyprus. So it's part of the culture, especially I think it's where they were and like when the UK came and they're used to foreigners and they have all kinds of foreigners, people from the UK who come spend their retirement there, people from Germany, like everywhere. And like they wait for the season when tourists comes. It's like, they can't wait for people to come over, and I think they're very hospitable and it's part of the culture. Also, I think it's the number one economic factor there. Like it's the best economic factor is tourism. And they know how to go around with it. It's pretty cool.
They know how to treat a guest.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, I feel you've piqued all of our interests. So you may be getting a visit from me before too long. Thank you for diving in on Cyprus. I think even more so, I wasn't necessarily anticipating this, but I've really appreciated your willingness to share more about yourself and your story and some of the challenges along the way. But all of it, this was so much fun for me, and I just really appreciate it. I'm sure others do as well. Where can people follow along and learn more about you and or Oyster? If you any links you want to mention, we'll put all these in the show notes as well.
Well, about me and my life, I have something on Instagram called Rolling Remotely. So I'm just trying to give tips to people to how to find jobs. My wife also is she's working in the Oyster Academy. So they're also teaching people like certain remote work etiquette from that part. From Oyster, they can find anything they want on LinkedIn. And if they follow me on LinkedIn as well, I'm always sharing tips on that. I think Tony he always talks about Cyprus. So I don't know if you ever got Tony on your show, but I think asking the big questions of taxes and compliance and work, I think Tony can give you a much broader and deeper explanation on that. He's very excited about Cyprus. He loves it a lot. So I think if you want to do a session about Cyprus, I think Tony is your guy. Yeah, but he doesn't act like it. Like I see him every weekend. He's a very close friend, and I've never seen a more humble guy. It's also one of my highlights is that I became close friends with Tony. Is when you look at CEOs or think about CEOs, you'd always think about fancy watches and money, and the guy is as simple as it gets. You're around him and he's always listening to you. He'll always give you the importance that he's learning something from you. This was also a big highlight. My experience in Cyprus is I got the chance to spend time with one of the greatest minds of remote work, and he's so humble and so easy to being around him. So I'm sure he would love to join, and I'll let him know for sure.
Yeah, please do, man. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his work. I follow along. For anybody that's listening and might not know who we're talking about, Tony's the CEO of Oyster. Correct me if I'm wrong, but originally from Lebanon and now calling Cyprus home as well. And just built an incredible, fully distributed company, helping other companies foster distributed work and opening up more opportunities for people around the world. So it's just like a microcosm of everything that we like to talk about here. So certainly somebody to follow, both Amin here and Tony from Oyster. I think you can learn a lot just following along.
It was amazing meeting you, by the way. It was better than I expected.
I like to set the bar low, I don't want expectations to be too high, so there's nowhere to go. No, this was awesome, man. I mean, conversations like this are why I started this podcast, and I would do it if nobody was listening, and it just so happens some people are, and I hope that your story inspires them and will probably, touch a few people's lives in a different way than other episodes do. So thank you again, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope we'll keep in touch and see each other in real life before too long.
Thank you so much. Thank you for offering me the platform to speak and speak freely. I might have spoken a lot, but it was very comfortable talking to you. So thank you for that. I had an awesome experience, and I hope whenever someone is in a similar situation where they come from countries like myself, I'm always happy to help and sync with the people who are listening, anything to help.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will we'll have all the links in the show notes. So for anybody that wants to get in touch, follow along, ask more questions, it sounds like you've got a great resource here. Thanks again. We'll stay in touch and see each other soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Chase. Have an awesome day.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.